Good evening, everybody. Hope we're doing fantastically well this evening, and welcome back to the latest video on the channel. It's a bit of a different one today, and it's something brand new for me as well. We're going to be looking at the Champions League Fantasy League, or Fantasy Football, which follows the kind of same logic as FPL with quite a few subtle changes. If you played Euro 2020 Fantasy in the summer, you'll be quite familiar with the rules because it basically runs pretty similar, if not exactly the same to that. And I'm personally going to be playing it for the first time, hoping to guide you guys through it as well. I've got a bit of knowledge from the Euro 2020 and I've been looking at the rules, so I thought I'd just do a bit of an intro video so we both understand, well, all of us together understand the rules and how we're going to build a team. I'm going to share the team, what we're building every week, and our thoughts every week. So let me know in the comments what you guys think of this content, if you're going to be joining the Fantasy League on Champions League. And I think it's just a bit of fun outside of FPL as well. I'm not going to take this one as seriously, but then I still want to get a decent rank. I think on Euro 2020 I got around the 10,000 mark, so not too bad. But there's a few subtle tweaks that we're just going to talk about compared to the normal if we use the FPL Fantasy Premier League content. So we're going to have a look at them. As I mentioned in every video, please just make sure, if you're enjoying the content, to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel, and I appreciate you also doing that. But we will get into the rules. So as I mentioned, we're just going to flick through the rules here. There's a few aspects that are very similar to normal FPL. So you're expected to pick a full squad of 11 players. So it mentions there 2 goalkeepers, 5 defenders, 5 midfielders, 3 forwards. Pretty standard. You get a budget of 100 million, which rises to 105 million when you get to the round of 16, because you're often left with the better teams who have more expensive assets. So it's a bit more difficult to build your team if they don't give you that added budget. Couldn't think of the word there. So I mentioned you can bet any formation you like, which is pretty similar to as you'd expect in FPL. So price changes don't work the same as in FPL. Basically, depending on the form and how people have played within the tournament, the game will automatically give them like a 0.1 or 0.2 increase. But that doesn't come into effect till at least match day 3. So the first 2 match days, you've not got an issue with that. So just, as you'd expect, the normal match days are basically the first 6 match days are the group stage, and then throughout the tournament, obviously the big change you have from FPL is when you get past to the group stage, or past the group stage, you will be losing assets. So we'll get to it further down below, but basically when you start game week 7, you will get to basically redraft your whole team again. So that gives you the chance to basically start fresh at that stage, but you might have lost some ground in those first 6 game weeks if you've not played the right strategy. I think the toughest bit of the Champions League format is when you get to that match day 5, match day 6, where a lot of teams might have already qualified, and then you're struggling to get people that are going to play 90 minutes. So that's the balancing act that you have with this format of the game. So in my opinion, it gives a bit of a different layer to the game. Like I said, there's 13 match days, so it's not as exhausting as FPL can be sometimes. So obviously you get your big break of like 2 months in the middle as well. You can reset and redo your whole team ready for game week 7. So it's just, I'm going to be using a bit of fun alongside the normal FPL. So one of the main differences with Fantasy Champions League is the substitutions. So we're used to on FPL where you set your first 11. The only way that will change is if they don't play any minutes. But on this fantasy kind of model, you can make manual substitutions during a game week. Depending on how the fixtures are separated, especially at the start of the competition, you will have games on a Tuesday, you'll have games on a Wednesday. So the key thing you need to do in this kind of format is play everyone that plays on a Tuesday in your starting lineup, because you will get points for them, and then you can assess after that Tuesday if you want to sub those players out with a chance of a Wednesday player coming in and getting more points. So you can make substitutions between those days. You lock in Tuesday, when all the points are finalised for Tuesday, you can change basically the start of Wednesday if you want. So if one of those players scored 0, you can sub them off. So for example, Ronaldo didn't play at all in any fixture and you've got Mbappe on the bench, you can make that manual change yourself because you think Mbappe is going to get more than 0. So you're not relying on that automatic substitution in FPL. That probably wasn't the best example. So for example, if Ronaldo got 1 point and he wouldn't automatically be subbed off, you could sub him off and put Mbappe on because you think he's going to get more than 1 point. That's a better example for you there. That is also the same for a captain choice. So if you picked a captain on Saturday, on Tuesday, and they only got 1 point and you weren't happy with that, you can change your captain for the second day. We saw this in the Euro 2020. It was a lot more effective because it was over 4 days, but in this format you can still benefit from it because it's over 2 days. So you've got one kind of match day, but you've got it over 2 days. So the thing I would say to you is when you first set up your lineup for the match day, make sure as many players as you can are playing on that first day, because you can bring anyone in after that. If you don't put those first match day players in your starting lineup, you can't sub them in after they've played. So make sure you play everyone from that first day, because otherwise you won't get the benefit. So it should really boost your points. If you fail with one of your choices or your captain choice, it gives you a second chance basically to make up for that. You also have the kind of similar automatic substitutions if you didn't make any substitutions, but I think doing the manual ones yourself, you don't really need automatic substitutions because you can make them yourself. If you guys want any more explanation of that, we can talk through that when we're building the teams for game week 1 and how we will set up the players to play in the first day, bearing in mind we've got people ready to play for the second day. So it'll make a bit more sense when we talk about that as well. So this talks about captaincy as well, which is exactly the same as you would get in a normal fantasy, but I mentioned you can change to the second day player if you're not happy with the first day. You also get into the kind of conflicted bit if, for example, your captain's got 5 points, you're like, is 5 points good enough? Do I want to go for more? Or do I risk getting 0? So it's a bit of what kind of risk taker you are when it comes to that. So the scoring system is very similar to normal FPL, but there's some slight changes in there. I think the key one for me is this one here. Every 3 ball recoveries, you get a point. This is quite interesting because it gives your kind of midfielder, especially your midfielders, your centre-backs, who, especially if they, like your centre-backs, if they concede a goal, they're not going to get a good return. But if they recover the ball 9 times, they get 3 points. So it's a very interesting kind of deviant to how the normal fantasy works, and I quite like that. It gives you like your Jorginhos, your Hummels or someone like that, a lot more value in the game than they would normally have in a normal fantasy game. So I quite like that one. You also get like an extra point for goals outside the box. You don't really have the bonus point system. If you've got player of the match, you get 3. There's not how the normal bonus points would work for FPL. You don't get a 3, a 2, and a 1. You also get points if you win a penalty. It's kind of like a watered down assist if you win a penalty. Most of the other ones are pretty standard. You get 6 points for scoring as a defender, you get 5 as a midfielder, 3 as a forward. Assists all get 3 points. So there's not much difference alongside the normal kind of rules you get there, but they're the key ones. The ball recoveries, I think, is the most key one. Obviously, if you get one from outside the box, that's great. And then player of the match award is basically like your 3 bonus points you normally see in FPL. So you can bear in mind that some of your cheaper assets you have in your team, you could be getting like a Jorginho or someone, or as I mentioned, Hummels, or even like a Fabinho, and they could still get you a few points over the course of the season. You might necessarily not want to rely on them to play the whole season, but if they could be coming off your bench to get you a few points when you need it. So it's always a valuable one to have, and then it touches on all the different point scoring techniques down here. So I didn't want to make this one a long one, guys. So I think the key thing to take away from the video, or key different things, is the scoring system they've got here. So think about those defensive midfielders, the defenders. They can actually get you a bit more value in this game format. So obviously, if you get a clean sheet and you get a lot of recoveries, that's great. Even if they concede, it's not a bad thing. So sometimes playing your defender in a tough fixture isn't a bad thing, because they could tackle the player a lot of the time. For example, if you've got like a Liverpool against Atletico Madrid, if Atletico Madrid are defending a lot of the time against Liverpool, they could get a lot of ball recoveries. So it kind of gives you a different dimension to the game. So then you've also, so the main things is that substitutions, that you can make manual substitutions. That's a key part in the game, which will look more into in game week 1 when we look structuring the team. Oh, and then there was one more thing I just wanted to mention, the chips. We get to the chips. No, there's actually 2 more things for me to mention. Completely forgot about transfers there, guys. You can tell I'm an amateur here. So, as I mentioned, when you get to the round of 16, you get unlimited transfers. At the start of the game, you also get unlimited transfers. You can be drafting, like when you're drafting for FPL at the start, you can be doing it as many times as you like. And you get 2 transfers per match day in the group stage. So, you can be, I think most of the time you want to be playing the fixtures. You can carry over 1 transfer to the next week. So, you need to be using a transfer at least 1 every game week, otherwise you're wasting it. So that allows you to probably look at the fixtures a bit more, because you always have to factor in you need to make at least 1 transfer, and that gives you a bit of flexibility in the group stage. You might want to keep 3 for those later game weeks, because there's a lot of different chopping and changing going on depending on if the teams are through or not. And you also get quite a bit of flexibility when you get later on in some of these stages, like 5 transfers, because you need to think later on, a lot of teams are going to be getting knocked out, so you have to have that scope to make changes. But it also, using chips alongside that, can give you an even bigger boost, because you could go in like the quarterfinals, you could go all out on like 2 teams to win. But then if those teams get knocked out, you could have a wild card chip up your sleeve to maximise potential wins, but then you've also got the backup if that falls through later on. So as I just mentioned, the chips are slightly different. I think we'll all understand what we mean by a wildcard. So a wildcard allows you to change your team for the next week and beyond, so you will keep that team going forward. So you get 1 wildcard throughout the game. This is in addition to these unlimited transfers here. So you shouldn't be playing your wildcard at the start of the game and for the round of 16, because you've got unlimited transfers either way. So you could go for different strategies. You might want to use both of those chips in the group stage, especially when it gets to that 5 and 6, where you might want to go for like a limitless, which, if I just describe the limitless a bit there for you, it's essentially a free hit. So you can put in any players you want for 1 game week, but you've got an unlimited budget. So if you wanted to have the highest value players in every position, you could do that. I think a lot of the time you don't need to be pressured into spending all that budget. I just treat it as a free hit, because especially when it gets to that game week 5 and 6, I think that's a key point where you're probably going to need to use it. You might even decide to wildcard at that stage, because you know certain players aren't going to play, and when you get to the round of 16, you're going to be able to wildcard. Well, not wildcard, you'll have unlimited transfers anyway. So you can get some good strategy around these 2. So like I said, wildcard is just make as many transfers as you want and they'll stay with you. And a limitless is unlimited budget, only effective for 1 week. And then you'll revert back to your team you had before. So that could also be handy in that 5 and 6, because for game week 6, you might want to bring in teams that have got something to play for. For example, if like Ajax, you're not sure if they're going to get through, but they've still got everything to play for in that last fixture. You might want to get Ajax players in because you know they're going to play their best team. You might not want to have Ronaldo in there because Man United have already qualified and not going to risk him in that game. So it brings a bit more strategy into it, because it's only over 13 weeks as well. But I think that it also gives you a handy guide at the bottom here, everyone who is a set piece taker as well. If you want to check this site out, just the UCL tipsters page here. So that's the key bits I wanted to touch on. So you've got about the chips, you've got about scoring system, you've got about the substitutions, and you've got the layout of the 13 match days. Outside of that, it's pretty standard FPL. I think the big one for me is the substitutions that kind of takes a little bit getting used to, but when you've played it for 1 or 2 weeks, it's not too bad. It's not something that will throw you off massively. So I'm hoping this little guide for you guys has helped. As I mentioned, let me know in the comments if you've got any issues, and I look forward to playing the game alongside you guys. Let me know how you're getting on, and I'll be doing a game week 1 video. We'll try to do one every game week, especially with the Champions League being a bit more spaced out. It gives us more time to dive into the teams a bit and make sure we're sharing the information between each other. So, as I said, make sure you comment if you like the video, like and subscribe, and if you've got any comments, if you've got any questions about your teams, you might have more when it comes to actually drafting the teams, as we'll do on the next video. But I appreciate everyone for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a good evening, everybody.